Good morning, everyone. You guys had your breakfast? Okay, that is a sad no. All right, before we start, I'd like to align first energies, just so we all are in the same room, physically and emotionally. So I'd like you guys to please raise your right hand. Come on. I know you haven't had your breakfast, but let's pretend you're so full today. All right? So I want you guys to please tap the person on your right. All right, tap the person on your right. All right? And I'm going to teach you really one clever word. So I come from the Philippines, and in my country, if you are handsome, you call that person guapo. All right? Can you repeat it with me? Say guapo. All right? And if you are female, you say maganda, or let's just simplify it. You say guapa. All right? Say guapa. All right. So if it's a guy, say guapo. If it's a girl, say guapa. And say, you are so guapo. All right. So that's lesson number 1. In the corporate world, sometimes it's okay to lie. All right? I want you guys to please raise your left hand this time. All right? Left hand. And I want you guys to tap the person on your left as well. All right? And tell that person, but... Come on, let's all say it together. But you are more guapo. All right. So I hope the person on your right didn't get it. But that is also lesson number 2 in the corporate world. It's okay to lie twice. All right? But anyway, so all energies aligned? All good? All right, perfect. Thank you for having me here today. You guys have a very beautiful campus. By the way, I was very amazed. It's my first time to come here. And today what I'm basically going to be sharing, as you've seen on the screen, is a talk entitled From Grit to Great, the lessons I've learned from the Apprentice Asia. So for the uninitiated, and thank you for introducing a while ago what the show is all about, this TV show is created by a very creative guy named Mr. Mark Burnett, the same guy who's responsible for The Voice and Survivor. So in 2004, he decided replicating the Survivor, but this time, rather than putting people in the jungle, he'd rather put people in the city, pit business executives, and win it out for a 6-figure salary. In this case, it was Mr. Donald Trump. And the first ever winner, if you may be familiar, is Bill Rancic, who's the husband of Juliana Rancic of the TV show. So there were 30,000 applicants who joined all over the continent. And I remember that magical day. That was November 15, 2012, when I was sitting alone, stalking my ex on Facebook. And I saw the TV commercial of the Apprentice Asia. And I told myself, this is the best opportunity to forget about the messy 2012 that I had in my life. So I joined, submitted my application form, created a 4-minute video, which was required by the producers, and waited for 6 months because that's how long they do the casting. The 30,000 applicants were trimmed down to 10,000, 10,000 to 1,000. And finally, they had to get the 12 most good-looking contestants. Why are you guys laughing? The 12 most good-looking contestants who had to be on TV. And so I remember clearly when the producers were asking me, Jonathan, why are you joining this TV show? And I told the producer, sir, I want to prove to the rest of the world that I'm the best marketer and salesman. Plus, at the same time, I'd like to believe that great looks come with great responsibility. And so I have to show, I am the world's, how do you call this? I'd like to prove to the world that I am the best. So before I start, and for the uninitiated, I guess the best way is to show you a quick 2-minute video summarizing what happened. It was shot in your country and in Singapore. We did it for 3 months, and it was showed in 2013 AXN. For the uninitiated as well, season 2 is coming up this November for applications. So if you're 19 years old, knows how to speak in English, and has an Asian passport, you are definitely eligible to apply and probably be the next season 2 winner of The Apprentice. In the meantime, watch this video.
It's the job interview of their lives. From across the region, Asia's best business brains are heading to Kuala Lumpur.
I'm not here to compete with anybody else. You only compete with yourself.
Selected from thousands of applicants, 12 candidates will battle it out for a dream job with a 6-figure salary.
This is not just a job interview for me. This is the job. I deserve it, and I want it.
But to succeed, they will first have to impress the boss, Mr. Tony Fernandez.
I will bring out things you never believed you had in you. And I'm good at that.
A self-made man, Tony Fernandez is one of Asia's greatest success stories. A groundbreaking entrepreneur, Tony has built a diverse portfolio of businesses, putting his hand to everything from hospitality to sports franchises. Mr. Fernandez is most famous today for revolutionizing the aviation industry. As chairman of AirAsia, he's established the company as the fastest growing, most profitable airline in the world. Known for his drive, passion, and commitment to equality.
You can achieve anything that you want to do.
To be his apprentice, they must simply outshine the competition.
Accompany Mr. Lee straight to his room now.
Next. Wait. Shut up, man. Shut up.
And survive his grueling 11-week interview process.
There's no excuse. Don't make excuses. You happy with losing? You have your chance to be fired if that's what you want.
What have you brought to the table in terms of creativity?
She always say, I. It's just an attitude problem.
Let me explain.
I've heard enough. Sounds a bloody disaster.
12 candidates.
I make sure that you are on the money. I got your back on this.
Yes.
You're driving down disaster road.
Why can't you guys stick to the time?
Not dance on top of it.
One job.
Oh, girls, what's this? Calm down, everyone.
You come back like you want to really be my apprentice. Or don't bother coming back.
Thank you.
Who will take the title?
It's a monumental screw up. For that reason, you're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
All right. It's interesting. Yesterday, I was in your college campus in Subang Jaya. And they had their own version of the Apprentice Tailors. And they crowned this really smart girl. Her name's Anne. And it was really an interesting sight to see a lot of. They were pitching about themselves and why they should win as the Apprentice Tailors. But anyway, so if that picture interests guys, there are many creative ways to watch it online. Unfortunately, YouTube is blocking it. So the rest of ways of doing it are very illegal. I leave that to you, of watching the rest of the TV show. But anyway, if you're also interested, there are other countries who do their own version of The Apprentice. So obviously, the most popular ones is The Apprentice US. The Apprentice UK is also very interesting. Apprentice Italy, Spain, Czech Republic, whatever. Most countries have their own. And I want you guys to watch it not because it's a TV show, but rather because you really learn a lot about the dynamics of people working together as a team. And the idea of how leaders themselves succeed, not because they stand out, but because they want their team to be as good or even better than who they are. And that's precisely what I'll be talking about in today's session. I'll be sharing with you some 5 key learnings in the next 30 minutes of what I've learned in the Apprentice Asia and how I think that can be your story as well. So before I start, something about myself. Here's a picture of me. I really come from humble beginnings. My parents come from a small town called Malinaw in Aklan, which is a 2-hour drive from the world-famous beach called Boracay. If you guys are familiar from it, of which AirAsia flies to, by the way. And we have an ongoing seat sale for 50% off at airasia.com. So my mom, a typical Asian tiger mom, wanted the best for me. She and my dad went to Manila, migrated, and tried to seek a better life. And I clearly remember my mom wanting to send me to an all-boys Catholic private school, because that's how you usually do it in the Philippines. But obviously, she didn't have enough money to send me to one. So she risked. She made a big loan on my first year and hoped that I would get into scholarship from grade school down to high school, which I did, by the way. And I was financially and academically pressured for the rest of my childhood. I clearly remember that my mom told me that if I only get second honors in class, I will be taken out of school because that only means 75% scholarship. Third honors only meant 50% scholarship. So I had no choice but to always be number 1 in my class. Otherwise, I'd be kicked out for the lack of financial money. I clearly remember as well, do you guys have experienced your junior-senior prom? Do you guys have that here? So the junior-senior prom is like an annual ball that you do on your last year before you do your graduation. And when we did that, and we did that in a very, very expensive hotel in Manila, my classmates mostly were sons of ambassadors and politicians in Manila at that time. And I was the only one who was a scholar in my school. And I remember that I was the only guy who had to rent out his suit just to go to that ball. And I remember at 2 a.m. when all my classmates were done dancing, one of my classmates would ask me, Jonathan, do you need a lift or do you need a ride back home? And I would tell my classmate, no, it's okay, I have my driver coming as well. Only to go back to the back door entrance of the hotel and look for a taxi and sneak out because I was so embarrassed. I was the only guy who didn't have his own car for his family. By that time, there wasn't any Uber or Grab or My Taxi yet. So it's hard to fake it if you have your own car. But that was a point of my life when I was so disappointed. And I told myself, why is it that I am this guy who was born to a poor family? And that was the same moment when I told myself that I'm going to be that first guy in Manila who would prove to the rest of the world that you can never be too small to dream big. That no matter what kind of background you have in life, it is never a hindrance for you to succeed. And so, if you look at the pictures here, that's me and my family. On the left side is me and my brother. And I clearly remember my parents would always tell us, if you become first honors in class, we will be treating you to McDonald's or to Kenny Rogers. And that was enough for us to succeed and to get on. Something I'd like to share about myself as well is this. When I was 17 years old, and I was a freshman at the University of the Philippines, and you guys are familiar with the first feeling of your first day high in school, right? You're this, guy who wants to become the next Mark Zuckerberg, clean slate. You feel that the world is out there to conquer. But that didn't happen for me on my first day. And I remember on my first day when I was taking a bath, I was rubbing soap on my right breast when I felt that there was a big lump growing here. And I thought it was a pimple. But days passed, weeks passed, months passed, and it was still there. And I told my mother, who's a nurse, that we need to see a doctor and get it checked out. So we had it checked out. And again, I clearly remember the first 6 seconds when the doctor touched it and he said, Jonathan has a cyst and we have to take it out. And when he said that, obviously my life flashed before me. He told me that there's a 0.0085% chance for a guy to get a cyst on his right breast. And the moment he has that, it's an 85% chance that obviously he's going to die. So I cried, I went home, and I remember telling my friends about my situation and told them that when I get buried, please play the song Semi-Charmed Kind of Life by Third Eye Blind. And please make me, obviously you guys are too young to know that song. You guys know that song? Okay, hope you do. And I told them to make me wear the most beautiful coat during my burial. So obviously that thing didn't happen. The reason why I'm still here to share with you my story is because that cyst was benign. But that same cyst, again, was the aha moment of my life. That was the point in my life when I felt that I was given a second chance to succeed and meet my ambitions. That was the moment in my life when I told myself that if you want something so bad, if you want to become the next Mark Zuckerberg, the next Steve Jobs, the next president of your country, or the next leader of the United Nations, you cannot afford to wait for next week, next month, or next year. You have to strike while the iron is hot, because you'll never know if the clock will stop ticking for you. You may be laughing today, but tomorrow you're dead. And so what I only wish is that for you guys not to have a cyst on your right breast. I'm here to wish that all of you would realize that the only enemy of the ambitious is time. In today's world, when you have technology, when you have Facebook, Twitter, and all these things to support you and propel you for success, I'd like to think that 5 years from now, if you haven't succeeded or you haven't become the person you want to become, it is partly your choice. And it's partly an effect of your series of decisions that you have made today and tomorrow. So I only wish that all of you, when you look at the mirror a decade from now, you tell yourself that I have become that successful man or woman because I have made that right decision beginning today. All right? So that's my telenovela. That's my story of my life. Good thing that no one cried. I'd like to share the first lesson I learned from that TV show. And the first lesson is this case from Roman philosopher named Seneca. And he says, success is when preparation meets opportunity. So do you guys know who Seneca is? Does anyone here know Seneca? I also don't know who this guy is. But I'm placing his name because it makes me look credible. But at the same time, he really said this quote. And I love this quote because he means two things. that in life there are predictable items and unpredictable items. The predictable things are things such as if you have an examination happening next week, or if you have a presentation for your biology class, you ought to prepare for it because you have been given time to prepare for it. Right? Agree? Say aye if you agree. Perfect. But there are also unpredictable things. You don't know that if you get out of this classroom today and you get struck by lightning and tomorrow you're gone, that's unpredictable, right? You also don't know that probably the person who will make you smile for the rest of your life is apparently inside this room. But you don't know that. Maybe it can happen. But what Seneca is saying is that when the predictable and the unpredictable meet, the predictable in the form of preparation and the unpredictable in the form of opportunities that knock only once or probably twice in your life, and grabbing that opportunity when it does, it can mean success. I'd like to give some anecdotes to give more descriptions about that. So you guys are familiar with The Apprentice, obviously, and I've been telling you how I've been such a big fan of this show. When I was 17 years old, I started watching The Apprentice US, and I remember when I was a kid, I would, be on my bed and pretend that Donald Trump was the one saying, "You're fired," or "You're hired to me." I've seen all 154 episodes of The Apprentice in all countries, and I would even illegally download a lot of the torrents or subtitles of other countries just for me to show it, just for me to watch it. And that for me was psychological preparation on my end. Because I've seen every episode of The Apprentice, I knew exactly what to say when it was my turn to be in the boardroom. I knew exactly what was going to be the first task of our show. Because if you look at the patterns, the first task of any apprentice show is always about selling. Apprentice US sold lemonades, Apprentice Spain sold tapas, Apprentice Australia sold some lobsters, and Apprentice Asia obviously sold fish as Asians. That for me though wasn't the psychological. I actually expecting was dim sum, but they ended up selling fish. But anyway, so Apprentice Asia was just one part of it. The biggest thing I'd like to share as far as preparation is concerned is this man. And obviously you guys know who my boss is. Recently awarded as Time Magazine's most influential people of 2015 after his responsibility and his actions for QZ 8501, which crashed last December. I honestly didn't know Mr. Tony Fernandez when I first joined the Apprentice Asia. In the Philippines, this man isn't popular at all. And I only found out him when it was starting, when the production introduced that this was going to be the host of the TV show. So I was very insecure. The Malaysians, the Singaporeans, and Indonesians knew exactly who he was since they were young. Because in this part of the world, he's very, very popular. So what do you do if you're an applicant for a job and you want to know more about the leader who's going to hire you? Obviously, you stalk the person. If you have a crush, you stalk the person on social media. So I went to YouTube and looked at all the videos featuring the interview of Mr. Tony Fernandez. So I have an idea how he talks, what are his gestures, and what exactly he's looking for in a candidate. And in those 34 videos, I saw that there was a pattern occurring. In every interview, he mentions the word leadership and accountability 5 to 6 times. In every interview, he mentions the word youth and passion 2 to 3 times. And that for me was like a Lohamora moment. Okay, does anyone read Harry Potter here? Okay, thank God. All right, because no one was responding to my gist. But anyway, that was the moment of I saw that there was a pattern, and the only thing that I needed to do was to expose those qualities when it was my time to be in the boardroom. I had to tell Mr. Tony Fernandez that I am the man worthy of getting hired because I had the same qualities that he was looking for in a candidate. So what's the point now? Why am I showing these things to you guys? I'm sharing this because I'd like to think that I won, not because I was the smartest guy, but because I was the most prepared during the show. I was the most prepared understanding what exactly did the TV host wanted from the candidates. And I'm sharing this because one of my biggest disappointments among our generation, I'm still associating myself with you guys, by the way, is this hashtag called YOLO. I hate this hashtag because it's the kind of hashtag I see on Instagram when a student has an examination happening next week or tomorrow. You don't prepare for it, right? You go out with your friends, you go drinking, or you go out having a fun night out, and you don't prepare for examinations. Why? Because hashtag YOLO. And I hate these things. What separates successful people from those who aren't are those who prepare even for the smallest things in life. If you win in life and yet you don't prepare for it, it is simply because you were lucky and not because you were good enough. And I hate people who think that they can wing any situation in their life because they thought that in their past experiences, they were winging it. You can wing it once, but you can't wing it twice, thrice, or even 4 times. So always prepare for things. I'd like to give some anecdotes for this again. So, who here loves cooking? All right. Who here loves eating? Obviously, this country is obsessed with eating. 2 years ago, I was able to fulfill one of my dreams of studying in a culinary school. And I clearly remember our chef instructor telling us one thing that I will never forget that I think is applicable in the corporate world. And that is the concept of mise en place. Mise en place is a French term which means to set in place. It means that you cannot start cooking. Your oil cannot start to be heated up until all ingredients are in front of you. The onions must be chopped, the beef has been marinated, everything must be in arm's length. And the reason for that is because the moment you start scrambling for ingredients, and yet the temperature of your pot starts going up, likely your dish is going to get ruined. What is one ingredient in Asian cuisine that the moment it gets burned, every part of the dish gets ruined as well? Garlic. The same thing that happens with your life. I'm sharing the concept of mise en place because in the corporate world and in the education world, we all have this tendency to believe that everything must be done at the same time. We have 20 or 30 things that we have to do. And in the morning, we start scrambling, not knowing where to start. Chefs and cooks do it well because before they even start cooking, they list down and prepare the things that need to get done for the day. And of those things, what are the things that they need to get prioritized? If there are 10 things that need to get done, they will only select 3 things or 2 things which are the most important and prioritize those because they believe that not everything will be important in their life. That is the concept of mise en place. And I only hope you apply that as well in your daily lives. When you wake up in the morning and think that you have so many things to do and accomplish, believe in the fact that the best way to organize things is to list down what they are, identify the most important, and accept the fact that some things can be abandoned if they can't be done on that day. And that is where the value of delegation or abandonment happens. I'm going to give you an anecdote about this. So what do you think am I cooking here, guys? Pasta, some prawns, and pesto. This is the metaphor of a mise en place of a grade school or kindergarten student. It's very easy. When you cook these kinds of things, do you think you need your own mise en place? Who says they think they need their own mise en place? Jonathan to Earth? Who thinks they need to prepare for this? Who thinks that they don't need one? All right, I'm going to be a snob and say I don't think I need it because I think I cook well and I love cooking. But that's because this is a mise en place of a kid, of an 8-year-old child. As adults, all of us here in this room, our mise en place in life looks pretty much more like this. This is how complex our lives as adults are. And this is how you cook a Filipino dish called paella with 24 ingredients. Imagine your oil is already hot, and yet you haven't even chopped a single thing. Obviously, your dish is going to get ruined. The same thing happens with your lives. You guys are already university students now. In the next 5 or 10 years, you guys are going to be deciding a lot of critical things that will determine your fate for the next 20 years. And what you ought to do is to prepare and list down your vision of what you want to do in those next 10 or 20 years. What separates successful people from those who aren't are people who know what they want and have committed to work on what they've wanted. And they only do that if they start envisioning about it, if they start listing about it, and they start debating about it as early as now. You guys have a white blank canvas that you can paint on. And for most of us here, especially your teachers and people like me, that canvas has already been partly drawn. Drawn with so many regrets that we wanted to change, But you guys have the power of drawing on an entirely blank canvas because you're still starting from scratch. And that's a beautiful thing to enjoy because that means you have the power to decide what you want to do today. All right? So that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 I'd like to share. You don't need to say yes to every opportunity of success. I'd like to believe that success also requires saying no. So just to segue from the first lesson, now that you know what are the top 5, the top 10, or 30 things to do in your life, remember that it's also okay to say no to some of them. Because humanity was never designed to multitask so many things at the same time. What I don't like about our generation is we've all been made to believe that we can become too many of everything. We think we can be a ballerina, a scientist, a rock star, an Instagram popular guy, or whatever, all at the same time. But if you look at most successful people today, those are the people who focus on one big thing, make a good name out of it, and work hard for it for many, many years. So I'm going to give you some anecdotes again about this. What you guys want to do is to close your eyes, all right? Because please don't sleep because a lot of people are already sleeping. All right? Close your eyes and imagine a situation. You're one of the doctors and there are 5 of you, all right? And in front of you, suddenly, a bus crashes. You're in a hospital, and once the bus crashes, 5 of you doctors scramble to the bus, and you see that the patients are all scattered on the floor. Some may have died, some may have lost a limb, some may have lost an arm, some are still alive but need attention immediately. All right? So open your eyes. My question is, as one of those doctors, what's the first thing you're supposed to do? No one's going home until someone answers this question. Come on, shout outs. I'm sorry? All right, you need to pick and decide and assess who to save. Close enough? Can you make it more concrete? Perfect. In the medical world, in the world of accidents, crashes, earthquakes, calamities, this is what we call as triage. It's a French term which means that if there are so many people demanding for medical attention, and yet there are only few people who can provide that medical attention, they only decide which ones will be given medical attention in the end. And that is, they decide who will likely survive and those who are important. The rest, painfully and regretfully, we will abandon them. And even if they have to die, they will be let to die. Why am I sharing the value of triage? Triage is important because life today is like that. We are bombarded with so much stimuli. We go to school, we see billboards, we see a message on our WhatsApp, we see an email, we see a phone call from our mom. We get so much stimuli, and we feel the urge to attend to all of them. And we feel frustrated that if we don't cross out everything in our to-do list, we think we're less of a person. But the reality is, in that list of 10 things or 20 things, only 3 things are important. If you're familiar with the Pareto rule, the 80-20 rule, only 20% of your list are the most important ones, yielding 80% of the results in the end. And so if you look at these most successful people of our time, so this is triage. If you guys look at who these famous people are, so you guys are familiar with Richard Branson, Jack Ma, Steve Jobs, Warren Buffett, who's this guy again? Bill Gates, and Oprah. If you look at their biographies, and if you look at their books, if you ask them one thing that made them successful, and I think Warren Buffett says it best, and he says, for every 100 opportunities presented to me, I decline to 99 of them and only focus on one big thing, make a good name out of it, and work hard for it for many, many years. You look at Apple of Steve Jobs, and today, if you go to an Apple store, how many things can you buy? Shout outs? 5, 7, an iPhone, iPod, an iWatch, Mac, some accessories, etc. Less than 10. But how many patents does Apple have today in the US that could be converted into products or services? Can anyone make a guess? 4,238 patents. that can be products and services that can be sold to any person out there who loves gadgets. But Tim Cook and Steve Jobs says, no, we're not going to convert them into any of those products and services. We're going to focus only on one big thing and make a good name out of it for the next 20 years. And what is that? It's not the iPhone. What is one thing that they've been good at and it's been expressed in many ways? That's your iOS. You put an iOS into a phone, it's an iPhone. You put an iOS into a watch, it's an iWatch. You put an iOS into a table, it's an iTable. And that is one thing that they've been very, very good at for the past 20 years. Focus on one big thing, because Steve Jobs says it best. If we spread ourselves too thinly on so many things, if we are too ambitious to accomplish too many things at the same time, we won't accomplish anything at all. And that's why when Steve Jobs was asked the question, what is one thing you're very proud of that you have accomplished in Apple? And he says, I am as proud of what we don't do as I am with what we do. Deciding what not to do is as important as deciding what to do. It's not about the quantity of the things that you have accomplished today. It's about the quality. I don't care if you have read 35 or 40 pages of your book. If you haven't remembered any single thing from them, everything is irrelevant. And so I only ask you guys, focus on 1 to 3 things. Make a good name out of it and commit to that for the next 5 or 10 years for your career success. Wanting so many things in your life will only make you spread too thin that in the end, you become a jack of all trades who in the 21st century cannot achieve anything at all. That's lesson number 2. I got to give you another anecdote. So I've been working in the aviation industry for the past 2 years now. And speaking of focusing on one thing and letting go of things that are not important, in 1993, there's this really beautiful story about a cabin crew member of Delta Airlines of the United States. And he said to his management, boss, can we take out the green lettuce that you're seeing here in the passenger's entree? Because 1, no one's eating them. And number 2, even if people don't eat them, it becomes rotten easily in the garbage and smells bad inside the plane. And so the chef of Delta Airlines was so mad because it's been a tradition for them to always use the lettuce for their entrees. But the management was very open-minded and they say, fine, let's explore it. And after 3 months, the passengers either did not notice that the lettuce was gone, or they even thought that the entire plate looked cleaner. And so they continued the same policy, and in 1 year, just by taking out the lettuce, Delta Airlines saved $1.4 million US. Imagine how a small thing can make such a big change. And imagine how the value of believing that something that was so important is not important after all. And that is the problem and challenge with most of our lives. We think that there are 50 things we need to accomplish, but not all of them are really important. As the song goes, you have to learn how to let it go. And so my challenge for you guys when you go home today is I want you to identify, do you have that lettuce in your life that you can let go? Because remember, for every no that you say, it gains you a yes to something else. And that yes must be something that's more productive and more leading towards a successful life. Lesson number 3, in order to stand out as leaders, you also need to stand back. I'd like to believe that leadership is pullership and not pushership. This is what I don't like about generations of today, what I don't like about kids, what I don't like about students. We've all made to believe that once we become presidents of a club or organization or a class, we think that the spotlight is on us. And we love that spotlight. It makes us popular in school. It makes us the talk of the town. It makes us think that we're superior than anyone else. And I hate this kind of feeling because I was one of these kids when I was younger. I hate these kinds of leaders because if you look at true essence of leadership, the leaders who are respected are leaders who do not command authority, but leaders who believe what's best for their people because they stand back and they don't stand out. I'm going to give you some anecdotes about this. And here's the guy on the spotlight, which I always hate about leaders. In the final episode of the Apprentice Asia, the second runner-up, who was already eliminated by that time, who was Alex. So that's Alex, by the way. And the other one is Andrea, the first runner-up from Singapore. I clearly remember on the finale episode when we were filming this episode, Alex dragged me to the kitchen in the morning and he said, "You know what, Jonathan? I don't think you deserve to be in the final two because you did not volunteer as many times as a project manager. You were very scared that if you stand out easily and your team loses, you can get nominated in the bottom three. And that's why I think you're not supposed to be in the final two." Obviously, he was assuming that he was going to be the other one who was going to be in the final two with Andrea. And so I told him, the only reason, Alex, why I didn't volunteer as many times, because I'd like to believe that when you are a leader and in your team, you spotted that someone else was passionate to do the job or is willing to do the job, you take a step back and you let that person shine. Because the real role of a leader is to make more leaders out of themselves. Once you start becoming a leader, it's no longer about you, but the people you serve, the people you need to develop, and the people that you have to make successful in the end. Because what makes them successful is also part of your success. Another anecdote I'd like to share is this. I've worked in these companies before. Globe Telecom is a sister company of Maxis, and GSK is a pharmaceutical company which is everywhere around the world. And when I was 25 years old, I was fortunate enough to be blessed to be always promoted every 2 years. When I was 25 years old, I had 2 brand managers reporting to me at a very young age. And I was so proud of the company because I was the youngest executive who had 2 people reporting to him. When I was 27, later that year, I asked my boss, and I was so fuming mad because I wasn't promoted when I was 27. And I asked my boss, you asked me number 1, 2, and 3, and I did those for you brilliantly. Why am I not getting promoted today? And she asked me, "Jonathan, remember that day when you made a very spectacular presentation to the CEO and you had your 2 brand managers helping you create those slides? And I asked you out for a dinner because you wanted to celebrate your achievement and you didn't bring anyone with you, even if I asked you to tag along some people." And then I said, "Yes, I didn't, but what's the problem with that?" And she said, "The problem with that, Jonathan, is that that's the very reason why I'm not promoting you today. Because you're insecure to share the platform and the stage with other people, and you're not ready to share the limelight because you think it's all about you." The true essence of a leader is wearing a corporate hat and asking himself, what is best for the company beyond what's best for my career and whether I will hit my revenue targets or not. And so I only ask you guys, once you start working in companies, organizations, or governments, understand that leaders do not succeed because people believe in them just because the organizational chart says so. People believe in them because they have outwardly communicated that their own interests are his own interests. If the people don't get promoted, it is the leader's fault why they weren't. Because the leader's main responsibility is to make more leaders out of themselves. That's lesson number 3. If you look at Brazil's laws, and who here loves football? All right? Women? No? All right. If you look at the semifinal round in 2014 between Brazil and Germany, what we know is that there was a record-breaking and heartbreaking loss of 7-1 in favor of Germany. And in that same game, what we saw is that before the semifinal started, Neymar, who became a national martyr, broke his vertebra, and Thiago Silva was yellow-carded. These were the 2 star players of Team Brazil. And the moment they were taken out of the team, the psychological confidence of Brazil went down. And the entire team collapsed, and they were butchered with a score of 7-1. What do we don't like about Team Brazil? We hate teams like Brazil because they are dominated and dictated by only one leader who believes that everything must be done according to what he wants. We don't like this kinds of leadership because the moment these kinds of leaders step down or die, the entire team collapses as well. What you want are teams like Germany, in which even if the team captain is not around and the star player is not around, the team members themselves can work together. And if you look at this guy named Götze, who made the only goal in the final round versus Argentina. And he was a substitute. But yet he made a goal because he believes that even if you're not the team captain, you can make a score. You can make that difference. And that's what makes best teams perform well in companies and organizations. It's not about one guy being a rock star. It's not about that one guy dominating the team. It's about the entire team collaborating together in believing that that one goal can only be accomplished if we work together. So I only ask you guys, and this is because I understand that our generation is the selfie generation. We think that the universe revolves around us. I hate students who think that their resume must be opened instantly when they apply for a job, when that recruiter from HR department has thousands of other resumes to be opened. But they think that they have to be opened because they think that they're only ones who are submitting a resume. They think the universe revolves around them. When you start working in the corporate world, it doesn't happen like that. Lesson number 4, it's not about working hard, but smart. And this is second to the last I'd like to share. One of my favorite things I'd like to talk about with my fellow employees in AirAsia is that I hate fellow employees who go to the office at 7 a.m. and go home at 11 p.m. believing that they're the best employees because they've clocked in 14 hours of work. I despise students who brag to their fellow classmates that after they've studied and prepared for an exam for 50 hours, for 3 days, they think they deserve an A in their subject. But what we really know in today's times is that there are people who work hard and there are people who work smart. If you finish that job for 14 hours and another person can finish it in 4 hours, this person's working hard, the other person's working smart. Why do we love people who work smart? Because these are people who, apart from work, can spend time for their personal lives, for the things that they love. They can travel more, they can sleep more, they spend more time with their families, and they are forever inspired and energized to go back to work and become better and more engaged employees or students at your end. It is not sexy in today's times to brag about working so much, and yet a lot of that time is actually spent on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter in the end. I'd like to give some anecdotes about working smart. So this is me and my other handsome fellow contestants of the Apprentice. That's how we look like when we wake up in the morning. And when I talk about working smart, one of the things I've realized after watching so many episodes of the Apprentice Asia is that you are tasked to do your own household chores. You cook your own food, you do your own laundry, you do your own ironing. But the producers were very smart that they only want all the contestants to share one iron and one ironing board. So imagine every day we had to clean our clothes and we had to scramble and panic trying to steal away the iron from one contestant. In fact, one of the contestants even had to hide that iron under her bed every night so that she's the first one to use it the next morning. But that wasn't my issue. I brought my own secret weapon, which is this. You guys know what this is? Have you ever used this, guys? This is a steam iron. You put water in it, and as long as you have socket, you can take out the crease in any clothing without using an iron and ironing board. So you do it like this. Why did I use this? When you do TV shows, and here's a tip for season 2 aspirants, there will be many times when the cameras and lights are not going to work properly. They want sunlight, but the sun is not cooperating properly, so you can't start shooting. In those moments, you're only asked by the producers to sit down, say nothing, and wait for their directions. And that's a lot of waste of time. And so what I do, I would always bring my own clothes, and there was nothing to do, I would steam iron my clothes away. The next day, when you look at the cinematic scene, I was the only guy who wasn't panicking about ironing his clothes because mine were already done. I was the only guy sitting at the kitchen countertop, sipping my hot mug of coffee, and trying to strategize how to kick out Andrea or Alex in the competition. I was working smart and not hard. I'd like to share another secret of mine. This is me and the other contestants of the Apprentice Asia, the beautiful ladies. And by the 8th episode, I knew I had to look at the bigger picture. I shouldn't be trigger happy executing things immediately. By the 8th episode, when you sleep at 1 a.m. and wake up at 6 a.m. for the next 3 months, it would be a very, very exhausting ordeal. And by the way, there's another tip for aspirants. You have to be very, very physically strong because you have to keep on running from building to buildings and you have to be awake all the time. I realized that the winner of the Apprentice Asia isn't necessarily the smartest guy. The winner of this show is the guy who had the most nutritious breakfast, the most amount of stamina to run from one place to another. And so by the 8th episode, I had to bring out again my other magic weapon. And that is this. Do you guys know Extra Jaws? All right? Extra Jaws is an Indonesian brand, which is like Lipovitan or Red Bull in powdered form. And so 2 hours every time the producers would say, all right, contestants, we're going to be starting the task. Please prepare. I would go to a cubicle in a washroom, bring my own mineral water bottle and pretend I was doing something else, and secretly pour in my Extra Jaws and drink it. In the next 2 hours, I was the only contestant who was like high on B6, B12, and caffeine, with a strong amount of energy like a kid on a sugar rush. And believe me, guys, I'd like to believe that I won because I have that amount of stamina to continue for the last 3 episodes of the show. Why am I sharing all these things? I'm not here to say that Extra Jaws makes you successful in life. I'm here to share that for you to become successful in life, do not be trigger happy to immediately execute. Look at the bigger picture and zoom out and understand that there are other things affecting the context or the scenario. In the case of the Apprentice Asia, most contestants thought it was all about being smart and doing the right thing in the boardroom. But it's not like that. The Apprentice Asia is all about having to work with the editors, the producers, having to eat properly, having to sleep properly, and all these things. The same thing happens with your school. It's not about getting A's all the time. It's about building social character because at the end of the day, when you start working for a company, they won't ask if you were the top of your class. They're going to ask you if you can go and work well with your seatmate and be able to email properly what you need to email because you have good communication skills and you have good social interpersonal skills at the end of the day. I'm going to give you an anecdote about this. And you guys know this movie? What is this movie? Catching Fire. And remember in the last scenes, what did Finnick tell Katniss when Katniss was about to shoot an arrow to him? Starts with letter R. Okay, I think I've heard it. Remember? Perfect. So Finnick says, remember who the real enemy is. And I love this dialogue because it tells us about the idea of working smart versus working hard. Katniss was so working hard. She believes that for her to succeed, she just has to keep on killing people year and year and year. The year before, she had to kill 11 people. And then she was randomly picked again. So she feels, all right, let me kill another set of 11 people again. But Finnick was telling her, you don't need to keep on working hard by killing people. What we need to do is to kill the capital because no more capital means no more Hunger Games. And that is working smart and not hard. And what I only ask you guys is that it's not all about working for so many hours. If there's a way to work efficiently to get the same job done, you win in the battle of life. And Peter Drucker says it best, and he says, there is nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that should not have been done at all. I don't care if you've made the best PowerPoint presentation for your professor. If it wasn't the chapter he was looking for, everything is irrelevant. And so I only ask you guys, don't be too trigger happy. At the end of the day, zoom out and ask yourself, is this the only way of doing things? Can I do it differently? Can we challenge the status quo and do it in a different way that no one has ever done before? Because things can become better and things can become easier. Lastly, lesson number 5, and as I end, I'd like to believe that the secret to success is out there, and it's called grit. So before I end, I'd like to ask you guys, what do you think makes people successful in the game of life? And let's start with school. In school, how are you guys measured for success? Grades, IQ, right? Our parents like to believe that once you have the top scores in class, you're likely going to get a CEO position or a really good position when you start working. Obviously, that's not true, and I've proven that as well. How about in companies? As leaders, how are you guys measured? EQ. All right, perfect. Someone answer that. We believe that leaders don't need to be the smartest people in the office. What they need to do is to surround themselves with smart people, but be able to have that emotional resilience to traffic different kinds of egos and personalities. That's how leaders work. Remember, the best CEOs of our time didn't even graduate from university, but they have that attitude and personality to drive and influence people to get things done. And so that's IQ, there's EQ. What else? What do you think are the other measures or determinants for people's success? I'm sorry? All right. That's a very good answer. That's not what I'm looking for. So, what else? Integrity. All right, that's good. Very important as well. I'm sorry? Perspective, being an open-minded person, and understanding that there are different ways of doing things. That's a good one. What else? Perseverance. All right, very good as well. Why did you think I win the Apprentice Asia? Good looks, thank you. That's right. It's very important. I'm going to give you some anecdotes about this, guys. If you look at corporate America today, and they try to identify what are the common things among American CEOs, their first theory was IQ. But they were surprised to understand that, in fact, some American CEOs had low IQs and some had very high IQs. Rather, the common denominator in corporate America among CEOs is height. And that the average American CEO is 6'2". Why is this? Because scientifically, it's been proven that we attribute dominance and authority to someone who's relatively taller than us. We think that someone's more good-looking when he's taller than us. So good looks may have an effect to your success as well. I'm going to give you another example. In 1988, one of the best thesis awards at the University of the Philippines tried to predict which students will make or break it in multinational companies in terms of being accepted for a job. Group A had photos of really, really good-looking people. Group B had photos of students who, let's just say, are aesthetically challenged in life. Right? Who do you think of these two groups had a better chance of getting a job? Group A, or who says it's Group A? Who says it's Group A? Who says it's Group B? So it's Group B. I'm kidding, it's Group A. All right? So good looks can help you out for success. But here's my point. Dr. Angela Duckworth, a leading psychologist about positive psychology in the United States, tried to predict what makes students and people successful in life. She went to the National Spelling Bee predicting which students will advance to the semifinal round. She went to the military school predicting which cadets will stay longer and graduate as soldiers despite the tough training. She went to Fortune 500 companies predicting which salespeople will make more money compared to their colleagues. In all of those situations, it wasn't IQ, nor EQ, nor good looks or a wealthy parent that makes them successful in life. In fact, in most of the studies of Dr. Angela Duckworth, all of those things were either not related or inversely related to success. But one thing stood out, and that was the value of grit. Grit is a non-intellectual, psychological trait that is passion and perseverance combined for a long-term goal. Grit is believing that no matter how many times you fall down, you tell yourself that you're going to get committed to it and work hard for it. Not for days, not for weeks, but years. And working really hard to get that commitment and to get that job or accomplishment happen. As what she says, grit is living life like a marathon, not as a sprint. And I'm sharing grit, guys, because I'd like to believe that my Cinderella story in the Apprentice Asia is a story of grit. If you look at all the 12 contestants in the Apprentice Asia, I wasn't the smartest guy, obviously, in the room. Remember, I was the youngest candidate with the least amount of experience. And most of my fellow competitors were already executives and CEOs in their own rights. I was the most insecure because even if I know marketing and sales, I had the least experience in how to work with other companies and most especially so with other nationalities. But why did I win? Apart from being good looking, I won because I think I was the grittiest guy in the group. I was that guy who saw 154 episodes of the Apprentice Asia, and I told myself that I will win this because I'm a big fan of it. I was that guy who was gritty, believing that I come from humble beginnings and that you can never be too small to dream big, and this was the best platform to prove it. I was that guy who, after being brokenhearted when I was stalking my ex on Facebook when I saw a TV commercial of AXN, and I told myself, I'm going to join the Apprentice Asia because I want that person who broke my heart to finally see me on TV to the tune of Adele singing, "We Could Have Had It All." Here's the problem though. Now that you know that there's grit, let's say for example you found out, you have discovered that grit is the best motivator you can have in your life. The problem with grit is that you cannot buy it in the nearest 7-Eleven store. Neither can you pick it up from the floor. Rather, it is your duty and responsibility to develop and harness grit amongst yourself. It can be a person, it can be someone, it can be something that you want to do in your life, it can be something that you want to happen 5 years from now, but you have to pinpoint what that grit is. Focus hard on it. Focus your energy and wrap your finger around it and tell yourself, I'm going to get it done. If I want to become that scientist, if I want to become that president, I'm going to get it done because I want it so bad more than anyone else does. And so as I end, I'd like to share one last thing that Dr. Carol Dweck, another psychologist from Stanford University, shared. And she says that for you to develop grit, one theory is to have an idea of the growth mindset. Growth mindset is a theory developed by psychologists in Stanford University that says that the ability to learn is not fixed. That as you grow, your brain changes. And these are people who believe that even if you fail many times, you love failure and embarrassments. Because the only way for you to succeed is to fail younger when you're young and faster when you're not yet an adult. So I'm going to give you an example. People who have a fixed mindset, rather, are people who believe that if they're not good in mathematics, there's no point in working hard at it anymore. But people who have a growth mindset believe that even if I don't like math, and even if I'm bad at math, I will practice more about math because I'm going to be better off than someone who did nothing at all. And so she made an experiment about this. And you guys know what this picture is. These are what? These are neurons. Our neurons work like this. The more you see shapes, colors, and sizes, the more your memories remember mistakes, failures, and embarrassments, the more your brain grows and becomes more convoluted. When they dissected the brain of Einstein, what they saw was a very convoluted brain from a man who made so many failures before he succeeded. And so Dr. Carol Dweck exposed this to two sets of kids, telling them that if you make more mistakes in life, your brain develops like this. Your brain makes more convolutions. Your neurons become more interconnected with one another because you only learn more when you make those mistakes. And so 10 years later on, when she looked at the IQ and the perseverance scores of the students, the ones who were likely to persevere were those exposed to this theory and were exposed to these photos. These were the kids who, despite their failures, persevered more because they believe that failure is not a permanent condition. That failure is only a stepping stone towards another form of success in the future. But you have to fail fast. You have to fail when you're young. Because you don't want to fail when you're already old enough and you have to make those critical decisions in your life. So failure is good. And we want to fail as long as we don't repeat them again later on in life. And that's how you develop grit. And so as I end, and again, you're going to ask me the question, but Jonathan, how can I start? Because I feel scared and I feel intimidated. Remember what Zig Ziglar, the best motivational speaker of our time, says. And he says, you don't have to be great to start. But it all starts in day one. You have to start for you to be great. So thank you for having me here today. I really enjoyed having a conversation with you. I'm just going to have one shameless plug, apart from the seat sale that we have in AirAsia.com right now. My book is available, which is called From Grit to Great, and it's available in all bookstores. Everything that I've shared to you a while ago is all in this book, but I'm not asking you to buy it because I'm going to make money out of it. I'm asking you to buy it because it's sponsoring the scholarships of students in these 4 organizations. In your case, it's for Teach for Malaysia, and 3 other countries in Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam. So the proceeds of the book go to these guys. I am a scholar myself since I was a kid, and the best way is to share that around the people who are high potential but don't have the power to get to good schools. So thank you, and I think the books are going to be sold outside. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, once again. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have another round of applause? Now, if you think you have some grit, if you think you are the champion of the second season of Apprentice Asia, now you know what to expect after Mr. Johnson's speech. And we will have 10 minutes to have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please step down to the microphone and state your name and your school and your question as well. This is the first time I see you not in front of my computer screen or me live. I wanted to know how did you put yourself in front of the other people who also have special skills there? How did you show them that I deserve to be the Apprentice Asia and I want to be the next? I need to be the next apprentice. How do you?
Very good question. And here's where I learned it painfully when I was younger. I thought for you to succeed in the corporate world, you just need to be the smartest guy. People will follow you, people will answer your emails, people will respond to you. But in the end, what you really understand is that not everyone will follow other people. They have their own individual motivations why they want to work. Some want to pay the bills of their house, of their family. Some want because they like the job. And you cannot control what individual motivations are for people. But a leader is someone who tries to find out what these individual motivations are and tell them, I can get your individual motivation achieved if you work with me well. In the Apprentice Asia, my concern for most contestants is that they all want to volunteer as a project manager because they think it's all about standing out in front of the camera. Because they think it's all about standing out in front of Tony Fernandez. But what they didn't know is that the editors and producers take note, and again, it's a tip for you guys, take note of what happens in the back scene. How do you collaborate with your other teammates even if you weren't the project manager? How do you stand out even if you were not the leader or the appointed team captain of that team? And when it was Mr. Tony Fernandez's turn to ask us questions, I told him that I'm not just here to tell you that I'm the most competent guy. All the other guys, Andrea, Alex, and Sam, are also competent. But I have the leadership skills because I can work with any person regardless of what the person's aspirations are. And for me, again, it may be hard for you to digest this now because you may not have work experience. But for me, emotional intelligence is more important than your brains when you start working. It's about sitting with 5 other people in an office and knowing how to talk and when to talk to them. It's about making people meet deadlines, not because they need to meet that deadline, but because they believe that meeting that deadline is important. It's good for the company. It's good for your career and other people. You don't get these things taught in schools, unfortunately, because they learn painfully when you make those mistakes. But I only hope that you get to avoid them because you see them from other people's mistakes. And that's why I want to share these things, because I think that my mistakes when I was younger can something that you guys can avoid when you start working. So there.
We have still 5 minutes. Any other questions? Anyone?
Okay, let me clarify the question. So the question is like, what can I say about people who don't have that right opportunities for them to study in really good schools, and yet they want to succeed more in life? Okay. Okay. I think that's a good question, and I think it relates to what I was saying in the last part of my speech. The beauty of grit, from what Dr. Angela Duckworth says, is that not only has it been scientifically proven, but what she's saying is that success is democratically for everyone. The studies on grit only show that you don't need to be the smartest guy in class. You don't need to be a rich. You don't need to be good looking. The people who succeed are those who are talented already enough, but even if they fail, they continue on. And the comparison here is simple. You're going to have classmates in this room who are very smart, very talented. And I also had those kinds of classmates when I was in university. But does it make them immediately and automatically successful? No. What we know, what science tells us, is that you only need to meet a threshold, which is a threshold theory. You only need to meet a threshold of smarts, and after that, everyone is in equal footing when it comes to execution. That is the idea of wanting it so bad and executing it, and even if you fail many times, you're gonna get it done. I have classmates who graduated top of their class, but right after that, they fell in love so much with the idea of being number one, they didn't pursue what they wanted in life, and they stopped there. And this is where the equal footing is democratically for everyone. That you can succeed even if you're not the smartest guy in class, because you get things done. There's a big difference between being busy and being productive. Being busy means you're just spending the time and believing you're doing something. Being productive means you're getting ahead down to the goal. And people who aren't necessarily smart, as science would tell us, are even grittier because they're more insecure to prove themselves to the world. I think that was my story. I was very insecure about what I had in life, and I wanted to prove more about life. And so I went on, even if I wasn't the smartest guy, even if I wasn't the most experienced guy in class, or in this case, the Apprentice Asia. So there.
We will have one last question. Yes.
Or maybe you can shout it out? I don't mind, okay? I think it's a good question because it was my first time ever to work with different nationalities at the same time. And this is where I'm going to tell you guys that it's very, very critical. Because in the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to be experiencing our region, the ASEAN region, with more people working together from different nationalities. Especially when the ASEAN is becoming more and more integrated. So having multicultural skills, understanding, and this is where it's more important, understanding that another person has a different way of doing things, but it still remains correct, right? When I started working with AirAsia, and as a Filipino, I only thought that there was only one way of communicating. There was only one way of emailing. There was only one way of being, steadfast. And you know how Filipinos can be very emotional and very passionate with their work? And so when someone tells me something bad about myself, I become emotional about it. I start realizing that you shouldn't believe that your only way of doing things is the only right way. You have to acknowledge the fact that people do things differently as well. And in the Apprentice Asia, it's all about not taking things personally because it's all about reminding yourself that no one in this world wants to look stupid. No one in this world, I'd like to believe that generally people are kind and they don't want to hurt other people's feelings. But when they do, it's either because they don't know that they were hurting that person's feeling, because they thought that this was the only way of doing it. This was the only way of communicating. This was the only way of getting things done. The best way is to put yourself into their own shoes and understand, why is this person saying things like this? Or why is this person acting like this? There must be a reason why. So in my case, I think that I wasn't into the idea of meddling with other people in the board and in the Apprentice Asia because I understand that they might be operating from a certain circumstance. And in work, the best way to do it is to not become emotional when someone says something bad about you or someone doesn't follow your own orders. They have the reasons for doing it.
Okay,
And maybe, sorry, before that, maybe I'd just like to add, and this is why for me, travel is very, very important. Not because I want you guys to buy seat sales from AirAsia. But travel is important because only when I started traveling did my comfortable truths became destroyed. It was the time when I thought that this was the only way of living a life, and you realize that other people do it differently in another country. And when you realize that there are other ways of doing things, you become more open-minded. You become accepting of other people's suggestions of doing another project differently. You want it to be blue, but the other person wants it red, but apparently either blue and red are correct. But you keep on insisting it to be blue because all the while you thought blue is the only way to do it. But if you accept that doing it through red is also okay, then that's the true mark of being a leader. That things can be done by letting people do it using their own style as long as they meet the same results that you wanted. So, yeah.
My name is Omar from TBS, Taylor's Business School. Yeah, I'm a person who feels he is passionate about many things in life. I like to do many things, not only in study, I mean in life, with sports, and I have many hobbies. Is it wrong to have many things you like to do and not to be precisely focusing on one of them?
Okay, thank you for clarifying this because I didn't want to give an impression that you have to abandon everything that you like. When you're young, and again, I'm taking from my personal experience, it is very natural to love so many things, especially when you're passionate. When I was young, I was into photography. I was into basketball. I was into a lot of things that I wanted to do in my life. But once you start turning 27, 28, or 30, you start realizing that you cannot accomplish so many things at the same time. At the end of the road, you have to commit to one thing and tell yourself, if I don't have time for everything, I have to devote this amount of time for this thing. And then once you start succeeding, you can go back to those things again because now you have more time. And you have more time because you don't need to work hard anymore because you've been working smart or because you are your own entrepreneur and you're employing people to do things for you. So don't be scared that you have so many things. Continue and keep up with that. But at the end of it, choose the ones that are more critical and tell yourself, which ones of these really inspire me the best? That even if I don't get paid, I will keep on doing it. And because it's an important part of who I am as a person. Keep that. I'll give an example. I loved photography when I was a kid, when I was in high school and university. But I realized whenever I take photos, I was the guy missing out on so many things happening with my friends' parties. I had to spend so much money buying those expensive lenses and those equipment. I had to let it go because I had other dreams in my life. I wanted to become an author. I wanted to become a marketer. I wanted to become my own business person. I can't do those things. And it's all about that painful acceptance that sometimes you can let go. But again, at the end, it's a matter of threshold. Some people can do 5 things at the same time, and if they can't prove, that's fine. But if some people can only do 3 or 2, and they ask me, why am I not succeeding? And I always tell them, that's probably because you're doing so many things, and you think they're all important, but really, if you focus on one or two, you can finally get one thing done for the first time. But that's a responsibility, and you have to decide what that is.
Okay, thank you.
We now have the focus of appreciation presented by Dr. Tham Siu Kwan, Director of Intellect, accompanied by Mr. General Assistant Manager of Life Skills Development, Mr. Albert Ling, Assistant Manager of Life Skills Development, Mr. Lim Chi Dong from the e-learning academy, and Mr. Charles Sisay, Head of Shine.